Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions. Car permits are available to students and staff. If you need help, let me know because I am here. Australia is the first AIDS-free country in the world. Library timings are between 4 to 10, and you can register yourself online. The faculty staff are very approachable, helpful, and extremely friendly. The gap between the rich and the poor does not decrease. Students have the option to live in college residences or apartments. We have 3 distinctive libraries which are nationally acclaimed. Parking permits can be collected through the Student Service Office. Please don't forget to check your email for the updates of the week.
In 1943, what became known as the Green Revolution began when Mexico, unable to feed its growing population, shouted for help. Within a few years, the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations founded the International Rice Research Institute in Asia, and by 1962, a new strain of rice called IR-8 was feeding people all over the world. IR-8 was the first really big modified crop to make a real impact on world hunger. In 1962, the technology did not yet exist to directly manipulate the genes of plants, and so IR-8 was created by carefully crossing existing varieties, selecting the best from each generation, further modifying them, and finally finding the best. Here is the power of modified crops. IR-8 with no fertilizer, straight out of the box, produced 5 times the yield of traditional rice varieties. In optimal conditions with nitrogen, it produced 10 times the yield of traditional varieties. By 1980, IR-36 resisted pests and grew fast enough to allow 2 crops a year instead of just 1, doubling the yield. And by 1990, using more advanced genetic manipulation techniques, IR-72 was outperforming even IR-36. The Green Revolution saw worldwide crop yields explode from 1960 through 2000.
At the top, you would have a king. Now, the king would rule over a kingdom. Now, this is not so easy to govern, especially during the Middle Ages, and the king might owe many people things, especially people who helped the king come to power, helped him depose the previous king or to conquer this land. And so, in exchange for that, and to help govern, he might grant land or fiefs to other people. And the key currency in the Middle Ages under the feudal system is land, and land in exchange for loyalty and service. So this whole thing is a kingdom. Now right over here, this is a duchy. And a duchy will be controlled by a duke. I guess they didn't call it duchy because that just doesn't sound as serious. So the king might grant a duchy to a duke, and in exchange, the duke would provide loyalty, pledge their fealty. If the kingdom is threatened, the duke will fight alongside the king, would provide their own troops. If the king wants to go conquer other territories, same thing. And also provide the king with taxes, which might be in the form of coinage, depending on what time and region we are in the Middle Ages, or it might be in the form of a percentage of the agricultural production from this duchy.
I'm a dietitian and I work in clinical weight loss research. Accurately estimating portion size is critical in research or real-world settings. For example, if you're trying to watch your weight and you're out to dinner and you're presented with a bowl of food, there's no really good way to actually estimate how much you're eating unless you're going to whip some scales out of your bag. So we wanted to find a more objective way for people to quantify what they're eating when they're out and about. I came up with a more hands-on approach. We got people to measure the dimensions of the food using the width of their fingers, and remembering back to primary school maths, we used the geometric volume formulas to estimate the weight of the food. To show you how this works, I've ordered a piece of lasagna, and that's my box, a glass of wine, and that's my cylinder, and I'm feeling pretty healthy, so I ordered some watermelon for dessert, and that's my wedge. So this lasagna is 7 by 5 by 4 fingers. In the future, I see this method being incorporated into smartphone applications. So you put your finger widths in along with your height and your weight, and the app will do all of the calculations for you. And then you've got a more accurate way to estimate the portion size.
I have said before that you can't have a civilization that doesn't have art. When we think about the great civilizations historically, all of them had great production of culture and art because a society has to be able to observe itself. And the sophistication of the great civilizations were their ability to look at themselves. And what allows a society to do that are the producers of art and culture. It would mirror back to the core of the society exactly what is being produced at that moment, how people are thinking of themselves, and how individuals are relating to the social structure at that time. Art is the vehicle through which we understand that. Were you to take away art, what would be that mirror? How would we see what we are about? How would we understand what was going on in Paris at the time of the Impressionists when people were learning to see in a completely different way? Cinematography, all of these things are just emerging, and here are people looking at the world in a very different way, which was considered so radical at the time.
What do you call a picture or design permanently on your skin made with a needle and ink? What is the opposite of majority? In the kitchen, what do you call the sturdy base you cut raw materials on? What do we call a person or an independent organization that inspects a company? What do we call one of 4 equal parts of something? Which one is more shining, gold or silver? What do we call a person who defends a criminal? What do we call the action of a ball that immediately moves upwards from the ground after hitting it?
Howard believed that all clouds belonged to 3 distinct groups: cumulus, stratus and cirrus. He added a 4th category, nimbus, to describe a cloud in the act of condensation into rain, hail or snow. It is by observing how clouds change color and shape that weather can be predicted, and as long as the first 3 clouds keep their normal shape there won't be any rain. It is difficult to tell whether the speaker approves of Hemingway's lifestyle or not. He was famously macho and spent a lot of time hunting wild animals, going to wars and getting into fights. All these things got into his books, and the speaker thinks that this is not necessarily a good thing, as it means that too many people prefer reading about his life to his books. Established to collect, study, exchange and display plants for research and for the education and enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens in each capital city. Zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation and display of native and exotic fauna in captivity. Environment problems caused by hard rock mining involve water pollution by metals themselves, chemicals used in processing, acid drainage, and sediment. Metals and metal-like elements in the ore are toxic and prone to cause trouble by ending up in nearby streams and water tables as a result of mining operations. You may have heard of the new fad known as ecotourism. This means tourism which is environmentally friendly and conscious about conserving the environment. The key is to minimize the physical, social and behavioral impacts of overseas travel. Tour groups will often work with local and indigenous communities to design respectful and memorable programs for visitors. Life expectancy has increased dramatically in the last century. Most people these days will live for over 70 years. This is more than double the lifespan of the average human in the 17th century. We can attribute our longevity to advances in medicine and lifestyle. While everyone agrees that living longer is wonderful, overpopulation is becoming a serious environmental concern. Car permits are available to students and staff. If you need help, let me know because I am here. Australia is the first AIDS-free country in the world. Library timings are between 4 to 10, and you can register yourself online. The faculty staff are very approachable, helpful and extremely friendly. The gap between the rich and the poor does not decrease. Students have the option to live in college residences or apartments. We have 3 distinctive libraries which are nationally acclaimed. Parking permits can be collected through the Student Service Office. Please don't forget to check your email for the updates of the week.
What do you call a picture or design permanently on your skin made with a needle and ink? Answer: tattoo. What is the opposite of majority? Answer: minority. In the kitchen, what do you call the sturdy base you cut raw materials on? Answer: cutting board / chopping block / butcher block. What do we call a person or an independent organization that inspects a company? Answer: auditor. What do we call one of 4 equal parts of something? Answer: quarter. Which one is more shining, gold or silver? Answer: gold. What do we call a person who defends a criminal? Answer: lawyer / advocate. What do we call the action of a ball that immediately moves upwards from the ground after hitting it? Answer: bounce / bouncing.